going to equip you with the slide advancer for future use.
Okay.
Great. So I promised we would say, what is this thing that's NFV that's shaking up the world? So what is it, and why is it coming so quickly?
So what is it? It's about, in a nutshell, it's about using cloud techniques in the network. Mm-hmm. There are many other elaborations of this you can go into, but that's precisely it. And why it's coming in now is that network operators, communication service providers have been struggling for a while with dealing with what's happening in their networks, the way usage patterns have changed, traffic growing, costs increasing, revenues declining, all of these things.
Yep.
So the NFV approach, the virtualization approach, promises to be a way to address all of these problems.
That's such a broad thing, right? Because it's the way to address so many problems. Is it something that they're going to jump into then wholesale, or is it the kind of thing, more that was going to emerge in stages?
Yes, so the different carriers have different business environments, different regulatory constraints, so they approach it differently. They tackle different problems, address different parts of the network, but all of them will evolve in stages. The stages are not necessarily the same for everybody. Mm-hmm. And what I like to do is maybe share a couple of slides which I have, which talk about the stages from a industry and technology perspective, and then maybe I can talk a little bit about that. So,
sounds good.
Basically, we are in the early stages of NFV, and it started a few years ago, back with what we call the decouple phase, getting into the virtualization phase, slowly getting into the cloudification, and then finally into decomposition. I'll say a little bit about each of these just so that we have the same vocabulary, you know what I'm talking about.
Great.
So decouple was the first step, right? Separate hardware from software. Run some of the functions in software, don't tie it to the hardware. Great. That gives you some standardization, some openness in the platforms you use, and gives you some of the advantages which NFV promises. The next phase has to do with actually running functions in a virtualized environment. That starts to give the advantage of more efficiency, better utilization, reuse of resources. And then you get to the cloudify phase where actually you start to use the cloud in a more intrinsic native manner. And that's where you really start to see elasticity and speed. So we are sort of at the beginning of the cloudify stage. People have started to virtualize applications, people have started to play with them in proof of concepts, in trials, but many of the applications we're talking about are not cloud native. They were built for an old world, they've imported onto the virtualized world, and they don't truly take advantage of the cloud. So the only way we can really reap all the benefits we are hoping for is to move to that cloudification stage where now you use more of the cloud resources. You don't bundle many of the standard functions into the same application and start to use the cloud. And then finally, the stage we really want to get to is a decomposition phase, sort of trying to get to the web services model where I have a bunch of microservices in the network, and services and applications are just composed of them. So what happens with this is that the applications and the network functions we know and love right now become much thinner.
Yeah.
They become easy to change, easy to adapt, easy to introduce. They're not the monolithic behemoths we have now. And you're able to compose different microservices and come up with new innovations much faster. So this whole trend of the various stages we're talking about, each of these stages gives you more and more advantage. It gives you some of the benefits. But you truly get all the benefits when you get to the last stage. Now, when you look at various carriers who are doing different things, you see carriers in all of the first three spaces. Some are just doing the decoupling. Okay, let me just separate software from hardware. Others have got into virtualization. There are some who are really getting into the cloudification stage. No one yet is at the decomposition phase because we don't have the technology yet. So the technology is there for the cloudification, but not yet for the decomposition, though in many labs all around the world, many other places, people are playing with it. We're doing proof of concepts.
That's the POC stage then?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, early POC stage, we're looking at certain examples to test out how this works. It's a journey. We always talk about NFV as a journey. You're not going to jump in and do everything at once, but you can do various things at different points in time, which give you certain advantages. And basically, for those who want to use this, you need to pick and choose where they enter this, this technology trend, because it's tied to the business problems you have.
So what you're saying is, as a carrier can sit out and wait for other people to push the technology, can enter at different points?
Different points. People are jumping in. Some who are more advanced in their own thinking are jumping into the cloudification stage. Others are still at the decouple phase. And it's not so much about technology, because as I said, technology is advancing and we're there. But it's also a lot to do with the internal organizations and processes of the carriers and their own business models, which also have to change. We're changing the technology, we're changing how you do things.
Isn't there such a huge risk? I mean, with something like NFV, which is a fundamental shift, the advantage it delivers is agility. And if you're a carrier that says, I'm going to put this off until a later stage because it's not fleshed out yet, and there's POCs, but I can wait. When you choose to adopt it, is it not the case that some of your competitors might have this agility advantage and start beating you on services while you're trying to figure out NFV too late?
Absolutely, and so it's very important for carriers to look at the business problem they're trying to solve.
Because this has got the classic VC problem, the fear of missing out. Like if you don't do it, and your competitors are, you might be missing out on something big.
Right. So one good thing is, almost all the carriers you can talk to are considering it in some form or the other.
Yep.
There are different stages, but some are at the POC stage, some are looking at early trials, some are actually doing field trials.
Yep.
So it's all over the place, but really you have to tie it back to the business problem you're trying to solve. If there's no match between the business issues you're trying to solve and the benefits you get by using any of these at any stage, there's going to be a mismatch, and you're not going to reap all the benefits of this.
Yep.
So, go ahead.
You have more slides? I'll let you go. Keep going. I don't want to hold you up.
Yes, I don't. So once you get all of these, another way of thinking about this is that the first couple of phases really allows you to get to multi-vendor infrastructure. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that most of the carriers want. They want the ability to pick and choose as much as possible and to get things from different...
That's, by the way, something I was talking about in my earliest comments today, is that NFV stands as something that will be disruptive. So all these locked-in vendor, and you got the decouple, these locked-in vendor relationships get broken. And new vendors like HP can kind of compete with an Ericsson, but also a lot of innovators and entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley can enter in where before
Absolutely. There are a lot of small players in this who are coming in and working with us. One thing I should point out is that HP, working in this space, believes in an ecosystem approach. Yeah. So we know that no one company can do all of these things. So we have a large group of partners we work with who provide us various pieces of technology or want to test out their particular functions on our infrastructure. And so we truly believe that this is an ecosystem play, and we all win when we play together on this. And then just the last bit, that the last two phases really make it modular, allow you to mix and match functions, really give you the agility and flexibility you're thinking about. And then so if you look at all of these things and ask yourself, what do I need to do to actually succeed in this? We believe you can break it down into really these four major buckets. You really need an ecosystem of partners. You need to have a good set of software and tools for orchestration and automation. And then you need to be able to bridge existing operations with the new method of operations, because no carrier's network is essentially greenfield. There's always legacy equipment in there, legacy networks in there. From a service perspective, you need to have an end-to-end view and work with that. So you need to have that in mind. And the other thing which people are slowly realizing is that there's a lot of process change and organizational change involved. And yes, you don't have to do it all together in one shot, but you really need to address it and think about it.
That's cool. This slide is like the organizational change is something Dr. Taga was telling us about before. It's cultural. The bridge to existing was something Greg Raleigh from It's On was saying on the stage. All of these things, keep coming. If you don't bridge those two worlds and enable it both the new and old, it won't be something that's able to get deployed. So it's, we're reiterating some of the same important points, which is
right.
Consistent.
So I didn't have any more slides, I think.
Okay, good. So this is great to me, because the vibrant ecosystem. Another thing, that same panel we had Mirantis. I was Kamesh Pemaraju from Mirantis talking about how they're doing OpenStack stuff and really finding this is new. That turned out to be a really good, rich area for them to participate in, giving lots of opportunity. How does HP feel about? How do you feel about OpenStack and the open nature around NFV?
Sure. It's a good point. That HP's whole approach, as I said, is around an ecosystem, so it's around openness.
Yep.
So the whole being open is a very key part of our approach, and with that we come to using the open source. Yeah. So, for example, one of the pieces of what we do is do the whole cloud orchestration piece, managing the virtualization layer.
Yeah.
And maybe I have a. So, if you look at the slide there, at the NFVI layer, if you're familiar with the ETSI architecture, the OpenStack, Helion OpenStack carrier grade is really about the cloud management system. It's managing the virtualization layer, the compute storage, networking layer, but it's truly based on OpenStack.
Yep.
We have a large number of developers and engineers working in OpenStack, whose only job is to work in OpenStack. And based on what comes out of OpenStack, we take it, wrap it up, make it into a product. And that's what we have extended into an application for NFV, where we make it carrier grade. So if you look, so we absolutely believe in the use of open source, but we also realize that just open source by itself is not something a carrier can use. From usability, manageability, and just support.
Yep.
But also, it does not, since some of these open source efforts have started with addressing the enterprise market, that's where their focus is, some of them don't live up to the requirements we need in the carrier space. So we need to do other things to make it carrier grade things.
So the question, do you take that openness and do you add proprietary extensions that then creates new lock-in, or is it take that openness and build on it in a standards compliant way?
Yeah, so we don't affect any of, for example, in OpenStack, we don't affect any of the existing APIs.
Because I've heard like a few proposed architectures, and companies want to insert their patented technology into standard-based solutions, and people say, wait a minute, you're asking me to go all this open route, NFV route, and then proceed down a proprietary extension where I'm once again locked in.
Yeah, so the key is to have that extension in a way that it's compatible with the rest of it and doesn't destroy it.
In one VNF, yes, you can have some proprietary extension, but it doesn't interfere with the overall platform and other VNFs coming in.
Right. And to be fair, this also is driven by a lot of our customers.
Yep.
They want certain features and capabilities which are just not there in open source. So you have to add that. Yes, eventually some of that gets back into open source. So one of our key tenets here is that whatever we develop, as long as it's compatible with the scope of open source, we will feed it back there.
So you talk about your customers. Your customers are the carriers, I believe, right? First,
our customers are the
service providers. So what are they telling you they want NFV for? What is the motivating factor you're hearing from them?
So it's all the things we talked about before. So it's reduction in cost, but cost not just CapEx. It's really looking at the life cycle and looking at the total cost of ownership, including operations. The major cost is in operations anyway. Flexibility, agility. Time to market, speeding up the time to be able to adjust services, modify services introduce new services, and perhaps even withdraw services which don't work.
Is it, and that's an important part, right? Withdraw, so rapidly deploy and allow to rapidly fail, and so, but reducing the risk of those failures, right?
Right. So that's one of the promises. We're not quite there yet for that, but that's what this infrastructure allows you to do.
I guess, as you said in that stage one, we're kind of at this decouple and interoperability thing, but not at the fully virtualized cloud.
Right. Some of the capabilities are there to do that, but it also requires a change in mindset in the operators. They're used to deploying services by having it available to all their customers and super tested and then rolled out. While in this model, you can try it out over a small base of customers and see if it sticks. The other good thing is in the virtualized infrastructure, the test sample or the customer base, the slice of my customer base I try out an application or a service on is not geographically bound. It can be any logical slice because I can define that slice of customers and I can serve it with using virtual functions to those places. They could be spread over the globe. That's very different from our current mode where you have to have the box which does the service closer to where you're serving it.
And that's like, I forget which tech luminary it was who said, but software eats everything. But this is the case of software eating boxes, right? We're used to, if I'm a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, I've come up with a great new thing, it's ringback tones or something, I go to the carrier and say, you just need to put this box here and distribute it around the country. And what you're looking at and drawing for us is a model where it would not be a box, it would be strictly a software solution. You could have a specific virtual machine if you wanted, or even run on a standard-based virtual machine, right? And then just deploy it all in software.
Right. And there is a need still, obviously, for some specialized things to be tied to hardware, things related to performance in some critical areas. But that's fine. I mean, that can coexist with all of this. The point is, in our current carrier networks, you have this plethora of special purpose appliances all around the edge of the network, which are complex, huge number, difficult to manage, and difficult to change. And you want to get to a much smaller number of well-defined hardware pieces, but the rest of the things are malleable.
So you talk about doing a test deployment to various sub-networks is something that's kind of helped to do. Sorry, you could identify segment, roll out a test to just that group. Is that geographically regional, or could you just say, I want to identify customers that spend less than $45 a month on their bill and test this out with this group? Can you segment it?
That's what I'm saying. So
thus far, it's always been regional. Like we're trying this in Syracuse, we're trying this in Texas.
With this you can, because you can identify customers now in many different ways. The carriers have a whole lot of information about their customers. They can use that to create segments for customers, and then based on where they are, you can deploy VNFs in those particular areas, or even have a small number spread everywhere, but your take rate in an individual area may be small, but collectively it's large.
So a VNF, virtualized network function, it's kind of one thing that we take out of it. That used to be a box that is now a virtualized function. So you could take something that say, core and so important and part of the network forever, which is say switching. Can just theoretically, can switching be a VNF?
Yeah, so I think the point to note here is that not everything needs to be virtualized. Your core routers, it's stuff which are doing heavy-duty aggregate traffic handling. It doesn't make sense to keep trying to change.
Some stuff will stay.
Some stuff will absolutely stay. It's really around the edges of the network and the edges of the service centers. It's close to the customer, close to the point of service. That's where the cost is, the complexity is, and that's where the opportunity is.
So, boil it down, like I mentioned, ringback tones, that's the kind of thing, that fits in a VNF. But, the core switching you might want to have on the fastest hardware and get dedicated.
Yes, there's no reason, there's no business.
And of course, those, is it safe to say that those don't change as frequently?
As frequently, yeah. The service changes are due to customer changes, traffic changes, which don't really affect what's happening.
So I don't think the carriers are asking you, can you give me a way that I can try a new switching solution every month? They're not looking for that.
They're not looking for that. I mean, yes, switching is changing to virtual switching in the data centers, at the edges where you need some flexibility. For example, you need to introduce service chains, et cetera. But not in the core.
So like a session border controller, is that kind of within the realm of?
That is definitely in the realm of.
And like security, as when I hear it talked about a fair bit. So security is interesting because it's something that's suddenly increasing in importance. And so it's a kind of a greenfield area in certain respects. So people could add security as a VNF and roll that up. Is that one of the ones that is kind of leading, one of the leading VNFs?
I wouldn't say it's a leading. A lot of things like virtual CPE, getting the functions from enterprise premises back into the network to make it more flexible. That the mobile core are good examples, whether it's the extended packet core or the IMS, those are good examples. Yes, in deploying all of those security functions, security appliances, load balancers, firewalls, all of them come into play, but they're part of a larger whole.
So I'm going to ask Prodip one more question, but I would invite anybody who has a question for Prodip to walk up to the microphone, and we could take up to 2 from the audience if you guys walk up. Otherwise, we'll just take my remaining question and wrap it up. So feel free to walk up if you'd like. So my last question is, a lot of things are, we've seen Kerry say, let's start slowly. Let's try one VNF, or let's try going into this piece by piece. But I'm hearing more and more that people are saying, well, once we make the commitment to try NFV, it doesn't make sense just to do one. So they're kind of looking for a bundle of VNFs to start with. Is that consistent with what you're seeing? Are carriers kind of saying, let's start with a handful of stuff and see how it works and decide to proceed?
Yeah, doing it for just one function absolutely doesn't make sense, because a lot of the business case has to do with sharing of resources, reusing resources. So you need to start with more than just one thing. But having said that, for many of the services we're talking about, it automatically comes with a bunch of functions you're trying to use to perform that service. So that could be the handful. So it's depends on that.
And then let me ask you the softball question, which makes a lot of sense too. You showed how all the areas HP is involved with in one of your slides, but like, what are the products you're selling? What are the products and services you're saying we would like to sell this into the carrier?
So we're taking this as a solution approach. So if you think about the slide I was showing, it's really, we're trying to cover the whole space of the infrastructure, the management and orchestration, operation support tools, all of that. So the environment in which you can run and operate an NFV-based system. And we partner with lots of our partner ecosystem members to do the virtual functions. So it's really about the whole infrastructure and management of that, which is our focus, but it's open and modular in the sense that you don't have to get everything from us, because this is what our customers demand. They want the right to pick and choose. So we make it flexible so that they can define the parts which they want from us and they want from someone else, and we can work together with that.
All right. So I'm going to do a fake conclusion. Thank you very much, Prodip. Now I'm going to invite you kind of as the first member of the next panel, because you're unofficially, I'll do this question. This is the next panel question, because the next panel is vendor. Vendor is the path to market. And your last comment was kind of a segue into it, so you can maybe tackle this one early for the next group. So you guys, therefore, since you talk about these partners you put together, are a very potential path to market for a startup who has an interesting idea in NFV. They could go straight to a carrier, which is an option, or they could go through a company like HP and say, can you aggregate my solution, put it into your bundle?
Yeah, as I said, we have a large partner program. It's a formal partner program, so you can join that at various levels. If you want to test out something on our virtualized infrastructure, that's one level. You want to do something more, like actually truly integrate with our systems, you can do that. So there are many different levels. So yeah, we are open to partners coming to us with ideas on innovative solutions which we can work with.
Great. So then I'd like to thank you for your participation in this Fireside Chat and your early participation in the subsequent panel.
All right.
Thank you very much, Prodip.
Thank you, Darren.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Thank you. Okay, thanks.